Okay. Works on just YouTube. I guess LinkedIn isn't allowing me to stream. That's weird. All right. So today we have a deal 5420 Java or Hava Ave, Birmingham, Alabama 35224. This looks like a pretty big fixer. I'm assuming everything needs to get replaced from refinishing the floors to, I mean, these are just terrible photos. I have no idea what's going on with the home. So we're just going to estimate the rehab, right? Now, in 35224, you remember what we've been looking at is we've been looking and capturing some of the recently sold data in 35224, so by zip code. So in 35224, some of my older properties here, I mean, some of the 4 bedrooms haven't been sold since last year, so I don't really want to use those comps because these probably give me the most confidence. Now, despite that, I mean, these are wildly varying comparable sales because you see this property is sold for 70 grand, and I would argue that this property looks pretty nice for the most part. I mean, the outside could use a little love, but the inside doesn't look that bad. And it's kind of crazy that this sold for $70,000, and this home, which absolutely needs more than $10,000 worth of work, is being sold for 60 grand. Now, this property is where in the neighborhood? This is in McDonald's Chapel, and this property, this one right here, is in Wyland, which is just right across from McDonald's Chapel. Now, granted, it's across this big road and it's closer to Birmingham, so it could be a completely different neighborhood. This is the other property here, and this is in Minor, so a little bit north of McDonald's Chapel. And this property sold for much more per square foot because it was a 4.2, 1260 square feet, and it sold for 136,900. And this property didn't look that bad. You could argue that maybe subjectively the other property looked better because it looked a little bit more modern, but still very different, right? Very big variations in the dollar per square foot. Okay. Now, this is the problem with a BRRRR strategy where you're buying, rehabbing, renting, refinancing, repeating. You really need to get your ARV pretty correct. Otherwise, there's a very high chance that you do not pull back out all the capital that you invest in a deal, right? So what's the point of a BRRRR deal, right? Let's say hypothetically, if you're able to get a 70% loan to value debt service coverage ratio loan, then your purchase price plus your renovations need to equal to roughly around 70,000, assuming you can get the property to be worth 100 grand after your renovations have been done. Now, with that said, the problem is that your ARV and the accuracy of your ARV is very important. And the further and further away you get from a home that is, let's use this from the perfect comp. The perfect comparable sales property would be literally if you were looking at this property and looking to buy 5420 Hava Ave, and the home next door happened to sell, let's say maybe the home right across the street was same square footage, same square footage, and same size, same lot size, same bed bath count, same square footage, right? That would be your perfect comp. However, the further and further away you get from that property or this property, the more differences you get in terms of bed bath, square footage, lot size count. I mean, all that stuff makes your ARV more risky. Hence why it's more of an art sometimes than a true science. Now, using this property, if I were to say I'm going to use these two comps, let's go ahead and plug that into our spreadsheet. So let's go over here. This property is, let's plug in this address. This is 5420 Hava Ave 35224. Okay. This is a 3-bed, 1-bath, 1734 square feet. And this property is being listed for $60,000. I'm going to assume that my rehab is going to take up a good amount of money. So let's go to my rehab calculator. Let's assume that I need a new air conditioning unit on this property. Let's assume I need a new water, or not water. Assume I need a new water heater. I don't know what's going on with this home, but maybe I had to do some basic electrical work for this house. I'm going, because of the 1,700 square foot, I'm pretty confident there's room in the house for me to add an extra bedroom. So I'm adding in about 12, let's do 10 grand using existing square footage to make an extra home. I'm assuming the kitchen needs basically a pretty big overhaul. So let's go ahead and just do a simplified home with low. Let's do a low end kitchen for $8,500. Doesn't have to be granite countertops or anything like that. $1,734 for my flooring replacements. $1,734 square feet for my painting for the entire home. I got maybe $500 for some landscaping. I got another $1,500 for the roof repairs in case there's any issues. So this gives me a total rehab amount of roughly $66,000. Okay. So now that I know my rehab is $66,000 and my asking price is $60,000, let's assume that I can buy this property for $50,000, a little bit cheaper. The problem is what my ARV is looking like is if I'm able to get this property to be worth, let's say, $77 a square foot, which is the average of these two. Now, granted, right? I know the average 77, but because this property at 4317 Fifth Court, it's relatively close to the home. You're not that far apart, right, in terms of square footage. So an appraiser might look at this property and say, well, I think your property is only worth $70,000 because your property is only literally a 5-minute drive, so less than 2 miles away. Granted, you crossing this big road, etc., but still, this is extremely risky because this comp kind of blew out the opportunity. Now, even if you got it to be worth $77 a square foot, your ARV in this scenario will be $133,518. Okay, great. Let's go ahead and get our rents. So let's go to affordablehousing.com. We're going to plug in the address right here. We're going to plug in the bedroom count of 4 bedrooms because that's what we're going to convert this property to. And let's see what the rent is. $1,343. So I'm going to put $1,343 right here in C13. I'm assuming the tax is about $1,200. Property insurance is about $1,050. Same thing for insurance, $1,050. So if my ARV is $133,518, let's go ahead and flow through these numbers. Okay, so $133,518. I'm assuming I'm going to borrow all cash. So my down payment, I'm borrowing all cash. Let's say I'm paying 10% interest on this deal. My rehab amount is $66,000, and I got some closing costs and some holding costs right here. So I got $4,000 of closing costs. That seems pretty fair, especially if you at some point need to refinance your deal. And I got $57.75 for 5 months of holding costs to get this property fully renovated and rented out. So that equals to this PITI multiplied by 5. Okay. So now that I got all these numbers in there, actually, I should probably plus utilities, plus total utility cost times 5. Because you got to pay for utilities while you are there. And $240 seems about right for utilities. I'm paying about $250, $300. Okay, so now that you got a total all-in cost of $127,063, the total capital invested in this deal is $127,063. So here's your rehab calculator. I don't really care about these bad case scenarios, but just understand that you should probably have some liquidity on hand in case something does go awry during your rehab. So 1343 renovations. This is probably the most important part on what's my cash flow after I renovate the property. Now, if my ARV is $133,518, which we calculated from the $77 per square foot, right? We looked at the comps earlier of this property and this property. So we know that these have chances to be comps. And if I'm refinancing this property at roughly 80%, so I'm doing 0.8 times the ARV, so I can get a loan back for $106,000. In this scenario, it's not a perfect BRRRR because I'm leaving in $20,000 in the deal, right? Now, if I leave $20,000 in the deal, here is my number. So in year 2, I would be making about 12% on my capital. Year 3, it might be around 14%. So is that a deal? Well, that's completely up to you. I think that's a lot of work, and you're hoping everything goes right exactly to make that work. So we think ARV is $133,518, and the purchase price is $60,000 or $50,000. You divide the property for $50,000, and a rehab is $66,000. These are your numbers. So how would this turn into a deal, quote unquote, right? Well, let's change up some numbers here. Let's go through a few different scenarios. If I'm able to get this property for another 10 grand lower, so let's say I bought this property for $40,000. I'll just go to the rehab layer because now you're leaving only $9,000 in the deal, right? Because you spent $10,000 less on the purchase. This allows you to get a much, much better deal because now all of a sudden in year 2, you're probably at about roughly 27%. So you might be willing to say, well, let me go make an offer on this deal, assuming I can get, again, ARV is still 133,518. The purchase price now $40,000, and your rehab is still 66. I'm not touching the rehab number because I barely have any photos, so I gotta assume that it's on the higher end. Now, here's the riskiest part. This is what you got to be really understanding. If your ARV is only $45 per square foot because someone says this is the most accurate number, right? Remember, this is 15.63 square. If this is 45, right, I'm gonna change this to 45. That flows into here, and my ARV is now 78 grand. Here's your problem. Even though I'm buying this property for $40,000 on a rehab, I'm leaving in 53 grand. This is the problem, right? You have a ARV of 78 grand. Your all-in cost that you ended up spending was $115,000. Right? That makes sense. Yep. 7% interest rate, $602. Cash left in the deal is 53,423. 53,423, and that's only a 11%. So I think there's a lot of risk here for a 10% return, to be honest with you. It does not give me the warm and fuzzies. And in this scenario, the ARV is 78,030. Your purchase price is 40 grand with a $66,000 rehab. Big difference from 11% to 27% because you're leaving in a much, much heavier cash flow. You're leaving a lot more money left in the deal. So that's what I want to go through with you guys, right? This is how I would analyze a BRRRR. And again, your risk is heavily, heavily dependent on your dollar per square footage for your comps. So getting your comps correctly, that's going to be so important because that's the difference between leaving in, let's say in your best case scenario today on bottom scenarios looked at, leaving in 9 grand in the deal or leaving in 50 grand of the deal. And if you're leaving in 50 grand of the deal, then now your velocity of your capital goes down tremendously because now you're leaving in almost 5 times the amount of the other deal. And that's what the difference between getting the ARV correct, if you were to get 133,000, or getting the ARV wrong and only realizing the home that you just spent all this money renovating, right? You spent 40 grand buying this home, 66 grand to renovate the property, and only for it to be worth 78,000. That isn't math. I mean, common sense says that's not a good deal, right? Why would you spend more to buy the property and spend more to rehab the property to make it worth less than what you put in? That's almost signing up for a loss right away. So again, this is not investment advice. We're not soliciting any investments on the call. The whole reason why I want to go through this BRRRR exercise is so that you can go through these scenarios and understand, well, what if I was wrong on ARV? What if blah, blah, blah? And the more you do this, the more practice you get, the more reps you put in, that's how you eventually figure out, hey, is this deal a deal, quote unquote, right? And again, not investment advice, not soliciting any investments. This is how you put in the work every single day. And you guys want to copy the spreadsheet, just DM me the word BRRRR, BRRRR, so I know that you guys want to copy the spreadsheet. I didn't make the spreadsheet from scratch. I got it from a few other folks. I modified it. I tweaked it so that it analyzes deals as fast as I want to analyze it. And that's why I do this, okay? I hope you all copy my homework. I hope you put it on your own YouTube channel. I hope you put in a rep so that you can have the confidence to pull the trigger when you have a deal that comes across the table and slaps you across the face. All right? I hope you have an amazing day. I'll see you all tomorrow for day 382. Have a good one, everybody.